Well, exaltation, if I look it up in the dictionary, there's something having to do with like levels of evolving. But the first definition was extreme happiness.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So,
You're an
how
ex-
would you define it? Happiness.
uh, Satchit Ananda. Ananda is the wrong word actually. Ananda is bliss. It's all right. It's quite good actually. Ananda's all right. That's the word they use. Satchit Ananda. Who am I to say? Satchit Ananda. Ananda, I think, is joy. Really, I might make me wrong, but Satchit Ananda.
Who
Ananda
am
is
I? Yeah.
happiness. Is happiness of the soul. Really, that's the word. It's the happiness of the soul. It's not happiness of the mind, happiness of the body. But those two, the happiness of the mind and the body, are, stem from happiness of the soul. If the soul is happy,
Yeah. I mean, joy is a feeling, sort of like a warm-hearted,
yeah,
excited feeling. Bliss is sort of something very different.
don't like the word bliss. Everybody uses the word bliss, bliss,
Ecstasy.
bliss, bliss. But I think exaltation might be a better word because it's got something more grand or more significant to
There's
it.
a feeling to me with bliss that there's sort of a feeling of peacefulness, like relief.
Yeah, so it's happiness of the soul. That's the West, and the West doesn't have the word soul even, but it's all to do with the soul, and suffering is to do with the soul. Interestingly, that's what again the Buddhists don't have that word. They talk about, they have this word suffering, which is a very important word for them, but they can't tell you what it is. Not really. So, but it's suffering. It's not just suffering of the body. It's actually when the Buddha talked about dukkha, 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 he meant suffering of the soul. It's your soul which objects to unpleasantness, the soul fighting. Instead of having a peaceful soul, you've got an agitated
Exactly.
soul. And the Four Noble Truths is trying to train the soul to stop resisting. And you do that
To this
through.
body, that's exactly it, is that happiness is a sort of state of openness in the body where just like that Rumi poem, The Guest House, where, there's this idea that despair can come knocking on the door or anger or whatever, joy, and like there can be a state, a state of openness. Let that feeling in. Sit down for tea or whatever.
Yeah, I quite like the vocabulary of it. That's what's needed now in the West, and indeed that's what I like with these air sessions. He's got mind. I kind of understood it in a way. He talks about mind. That's one thing. Mind is to be destroyed. In his vocabulary, mind has got to go. That is the number one priority. And then when mind is gone, you're left with consciousness. And consciousness is very closely, in some way, related to the soul, what he calls soul or self, the Atman. Atman in consciousness. And then I said to him that the quality of consciousness is awareness and silence. And then I said, because of the close relationship to the soul, I said, is the soul or self, is that also awareness and silence? And he said, well, that's God. So it's like it hasn't got a quality. Quite interesting, like, because I know that if you ask him again, he'll probably come back with a different answer. But however he answers, you realize that he's working, but and it's
So,
quite impressive, really. You
yeah.
could maybe you would answer that, but if you talk about what's the quality of Atman, truth, Ramana would say, well, he said God is silence. And then I say to Atman, this air is God's silence. And so that
Some
people,
people talk about, sorry,
it's okay.
some people talk about consciousness as, in place of the one, the absolute, the infinite, the nothing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I don't like that confusion, and I wish it had been made. I've got really part of my downfall came because I didn't understand what the teacher was saying, and it just annoyed me because I got his vocabulary all mixed up with the Buddha. The Buddha, it's not the Buddha's vocabulary because it's translation. You're working with a translation of what the Buddha said, and it's all extreme. It's such a muddle. This word consciousness is overused in the Buddhist tradition. They don't really know what it means. They just keep using it, and it's
yeah, I agree with you. I can find it really confusing because there's sort of a physical consciousness of the brain just being aware of something.
so.
So it can be very confusing. And consciousness and all awareness is a dualistic concept. Conscious of what? Aware of what?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's also the case.